Welcome, everyone. My name is Taurus the Legend. Thank you so much for joining us in our episode 7 of our 8-episode series, the SAP BTP DevOps and Observability in Action. For those who joined us over the last 6 episodes, we started on episode 1 and 2 on a YouTube live stream, Unlock the Potential of DevOps on SAP BTP with SAP Cloud ALM, followed by episode 2, SAP Cloud ALM for SAP BTP Operations. Then the last 4 sessions, we were on a Zoom call. Episode 3 was logging and alerting with SAP Cloud ALM for your apps on SAP BTP. Episode 4 was a demo of episode 3, demo on the unified alerting and logging approach on SAP BTP. Last week on episode 5, we did reduce your operation efforts with SAP Cloud ALM, SAP Automation Pilot, and the Terraform provider for SAP BTP. And the following episode, episode 6, was a demo on the episode 5 session, demo on how to automate technical operation tasks for running your application on SAP BTP. Today's session, now this is obviously an error, is episode 7, delivery of SAP BTP content. Tomorrow we'll be doing a demo on what you're going to be seeing today. So I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. My colleague Krzysztof Szymanski, product manager at SAP, followed by my colleague Hal Stevens, product manager again at SAP, and finally my colleague Stefan Jacobi, product manager at SAP. These are our 3 speakers that will be covering our 3 topics today. So Krzysztof will be covering enhanced flexibility for your pipelines in SAP Continuous Integration and Delivery Service, followed by Hal. He'll be covering transport of further content types with SAP Cloud Transport Management Service, and then finishing the 3rd session by Stefan, enablement of new content management use cases with SAP Content Agent service. And then our 3 colleagues, my 3 colleagues, will be back tomorrow to give you guys more of a deeper dive in terms of a demo on each one of these topics. So now I'd like to hand it over to Krzysztof to kick us our session off. Krzysztof?
Yes. So let me shortly switch to share my screen. Yeah, thanks, Taurus, for the introduction, and thanks in general for having us here. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
The final button click still missing.
It's coming. Yeah, it's coming up.
There we go. All right. Thanks. So yes, as Taurus said, this is going to be the first part of today's hour dealing with SAP Continuous Integration and Delivery. My name is Krzysztof Szymanski. I'm a very proud service owner of that service and a couple of other things around development processes, development experience. And I want to do 2 things today. I want to show you what we have as new features to enhance the flexibility of our service. Yeah, so that's a new feature that we introduced end of last year, and it really changes things how to use the service. But to get everybody on the same page, I also want to introduce a couple of concepts and the service itself in the first part. So let me start with a gentle introduction. Usually, we need to talk about terminology. Continuous integration, continuous delivery. I will talk a lot about CI/CD, so that's the abbreviations of that. These are development practices that have been around for quite some time. Continuous integration is a very common practice that requires developers to merge or to integrate their changes frequently into a common, here it says single mainline, or in a common branch in a source code repository. So this is usually a Git-based repository these days, and we're talking about specific branch like a main branch. And frequently here means rather often, not once per year, not twice per year, but a couple of times per day, perhaps. And why do we want that to happen frequently? That's usually because when you do frequent integrations, you have smaller changes, and smaller changes are just much easier to integrate. With integration, usually you have conflicts, smaller changes, smaller conflicts, faster resolution, everybody's happy. So this is a lot about reducing the pain for the developer, giving fast feedback to the developers that they can just continue their work. And this is also supported by what we call continuous integration pipelines. It's not only integration on the source code level, resolving the conflicts, but also it's very common to have a pipeline that automatically builds the software, executes all tests, and if they pass, you can be pretty sure that that you have not introduced any regressions with these changes. Continuous delivery on the right-hand side adds a couple more things to this. So it's again a continuous thing. We don't want to deliver twice per year, but much more frequently. And here we have enhanced the pipeline in a way that it has even more comprehensive tests and validations, usually running also longer. So here it's acceptable that pipeline runs like 20 minutes, half an hour. If you need to do a lot of validations, that will just take some time. And it creates a potentially shippable product increment. And it often includes also a deployment to a productive system, to a productive account, or a delivery, basically. And this is about getting changes faster to the end user and in a more controlled way. And of course, on BTP, we want to support you to implement those practices, and therefore we have created the SAP Continuous Integration and Delivery Service, which is a service that, despite its name, it's not a general purpose CI/CD service. You might know tools like Jenkins or Azure DevOps pipelines or Travis CI. These are general purpose CI tools that help you to automate basically anything that you can script. In our service, we focus on SAP specific scenarios, SAP specific runtimes. So we are providing ready to use pipelines that are really easy to set up for something, for things like for applications that are based on the Cloud Application Programming Model, for applications that are supposed to run on Cloud Foundry, on BTP Kyma, or on Neo, etc. So these things are the templates that we provide in the service. And as I want to show you in the demo in a minute, is also how easy that is to set up. So the main goal here is really to make CI/CD really accessible to teams, not an expert thing where you need a specific DevOps team to set these things up, but to enable teams to set up their own pipelines. And therefore, this must be really easy. All right. That being said, I hope that covers very briefly the basics. So what is the service? What is the benefit that we want to provide to the developer community? And now I want to move on to the new feature that I want to show you also in the demo. So in this demo, I want to create a continuous delivery pipeline. So a release pipeline, a release job for a CAP-based application. It will use default stages that we are having in the service, but it will also use the additional commands feature to implement something very custom and very specific. Maybe let's go to this slide first before I jump into the demo. So what does this additional commands feature do? I was talking about that we are providing ready to use pipelines, and this simplicity and the ready-to-use aspects come at the cost of reduced flexibility. So we reduce the number of options to configure in the service. And often customers, you might know that better than I do, often customers have this, one or two custom features or requirements that they absolutely need to have to run their scenario. And this was not possible up to now, but with additional commands, you can basically write your own scripts and execute them before or after a pipeline stage in the service. Yeah, and this enables you to create really custom flows and custom features. Good examples here are customers were wondering how to fetch sources from a protected artifact repository during build time. So there you need additional credentials to make that happen. That is now possible. Or another thing, and that's what I'm going to show, is you want to interact after your pipeline has run successfully. You might want to interact with GitHub and create a release. That's a concept in GitHub. Create a release and a tag in GitHub so you always know which version has been actually delivered. Yeah, now I will jump to the demo. Let's go into my browser. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, we can still see your screen.
So now I'm just showing you the SAP account where I have prepared all the tooling that I need in the session, even more than I need. So here I have an instance of SAP Continuous Integration and Delivery Service, and I will just jump into that application. And here in GitHub, on github.com, but it can also be on your GitHub Enterprise, or it could be anywhere else. I have prepared a sample application. I've taken this from the SAP samples repository, which is a bookshop example. It's a CAP application. It's built using MTARs. So that is the application that I want to release. For that, I will go into the CI/CD service now and create a release job. Here you see the landing page. You might have seen that before, just the landing page of an empty instance. And I will just create a new job here. I want to call it release. Yeah. So I find it later, releasing our. So, and I will need to point that to the repository. So let's do that. Add a new repository. Shop book. Shop repository. I will need to add the clone URL. I take that from the browser. I don't need credentials because it's a public repository on github.com. I don't need the cloud connector. And also what you usually want to have is a webhook to automatically start the job. I will remove that here. Instead, I will just add the plain repository because I will just start this job later manually. So still, we are with the general information for this job. So I've pointed it to our bookshop repository. I want to build off the main branch. Yeah, that's a release job. Of course, I want to not to release from any random branch, but from the release branch. And in the next dropdown, I will choose a fitting pipeline template for our scenario. So we want to deploy to the Cloud Foundry environment, which is the default. That's very convenient. But also we offer, as I mentioned earlier, other SAP-specific ready-to-use pipelines within the service. So that being picked, I've entered all the general information that I need. Much more interesting than that are the stages that are part of our job. I will configure the stages using our UI, which is, in my opinion, the reason why it's rather easy to set that up. There's also the option to configure the jobs using a config YML in the source code repository, but the UI is way more accessible than that. All right, so first stage is the build stage. We have an MTA, I've shown that before. I'm going to choose the latest Java and Node versions for the build. I will leave out, for time's sake, all the other things that you should do. Yeah, static code checks, lint checks, please do that. Additional unit tests you should have in your application. You can turn off on the malware scan. Acceptance is interesting. You know, in an acceptance stage, you can deploy your application and run tests against this deployed instance of your application. Compliance stage is a good thing, which will help you to implement quality checks using Sonar, Sonar Cloud, or the Sonar Cube. But I will focus on the release stage in this demo. So the release stage, as I said earlier, contains a deployment. So let's have a deployment to Cloud Foundry space. And here I will need to switch to my cheat sheet. So I will need an API endpoint here. I need an org, which I called org. I need a space, and that's just def. Since it's a productive deployment, in this example, I want to do blue-green deployment, of course, so I don't have any downtime. And for credential, I'm using my technical user, CF deployment user that I've prepared before. So that is basically the default offering that we have in the service. We have a central build now. I'm just saving this job. We have a central build now, and we have a deployment from this job. Now, as I said, we want to add some custom behavior, and that includes to create a GitHub release, and that includes executing a script. And thankfully, you don't have to watch me writing this script in a clumsy way. So we have a block. Here it says former member, but I know who's done it. My colleague Markus Holl has written this block that explains how to use additional commands to set up a GitHub release with additional build artifacts. Now, in this block, which is linked in the slides, we see the script. We see some parameters that need to be provided and a step-by-step instruction how to set that up in the service. And I have prepared one thing here. I have put the script already in the source code repository. So create release is a folder that contains the create release JS script that will actually take our build result, upload it to GitHub, create a GitHub release and a tag. So let's do that. Let's see how we can implement this custom functionality in the CI/CD service. Let's edit our release job. And we go to our release stage and we want to add an additional command. Let's go here. We want it to run after the deployment. So we are sure everything's fine. We don't want to have it to add a tag, a release tag to anything that did not pass the job. So it runs last on the stage. And we want to enter this folder that I've shown you, create release. And if that's successful, we want an npm install because it's a Node.js script. And if that succeeds, we want to run node create release.js. All right. So that is the command that we want to execute. Just to make sure I did not introduce any typos, I will just paste over that. And yeah, that's what we want to execute. For that, as I said, we are interacting with the GitHub API. We would need additional credentials. So let's add those. The name for those credentials, also this is in the block, GitHub token. And the credential I have prepared already. It's a developer token from GitHub. Let's take this. Down. So now one thing that we need in addition to that is a variable that tells the job where to pick up the build result. It's called the additional asset. Also, this is described in detail in the blog. And here we have our build result. As you see, it's an MTAR, so their build result is, so that's the result of a build for an MTA-based application, bookshop, cap hire. This is just what we want to upload to GitHub. And if I set this, I'm basically done. Now I have a central build, I have a deployment to Cloud Foundry, and if all this goes well, we assume we have a good increment, we will tag it and create a release in GitHub. So let's run this manually. You can also start this automatically using webhooks. And since this job is going to take some time, I'm just going to jump to how it looks like if it succeeds. Let's go to our CAP Bookshop WTI5 repository. And in GitHub, you see a couple of things. You can see here the tags that have been created. Yes, you see a version. We're using a timestamp, basically. You can also use semantic versioning or any other versioning system that you want, of course. That's just strings. And we have created releases. So just before the session, I've created one release using this pipeline that shows you how this looks eventually. Yeah. So this is the release. It's called Bookshop Timestamp. It shows you which changes have went into this release. And it has a link to the build result, which is an MTAR file that you can also download and inspect if you want to. All right, let's just look at our job, which is still running, so no surprise here. It will take some time. It's just downloading the changes, then it will run the central build, etc., etc. So as I said, let's not wait for that. Instead, I will go back to the presentation to wrap it up. So what I wanted to show to you is how you can augment any CI/CD pipeline in the SAP Continuous Integration and Delivery Service with custom behavior using Node.js. You can write a script, you can inject variables, you can inject credentials into this script environment to implement custom behavior. Yeah, so I would be always interested in what kind of custom functionality you are missing in the service that you have created using additional commands. So I would always be interested in feedback, and we hope that this gives you the ability to actually also use the CI/CD service not only in very standard scenarios, but also in your custom environment. Yeah. That being said, I think I'm at the end of it. Do we have time for questions? So I'm open for questions also after the session. Toros, how do we continue?
Sorry, I was muted. I think we should. I don't see any questions in the chat. So if you guys do have questions for Christoph, please do type your questions in the chat. And as we move forward, Christoph will answer your questions.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Christoph. I'd like to now ask Harold if you wanted to continue.
Yeah, I will continue. Maybe I switch on my camera for a second. Maybe Christoph, if you can stop sharing, and I can take over.
Yes. There we go.
All right. Yeah, so just to get an impression how we look like, Christoph has also switched on his camera. I will switch it off in a second just to save the bandwidth. Yeah, my name is Harald Stevens. I'm the product manager for Cloud Transport Management, and that will be the topic of the next 20 minutes. And let me start sharing my screen. This one. So, can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. Then let's get started. Okay. Yeah, so will be talking about further content types we have available since a few, I think going back at least a little more than 1 year. And I will then, have a demo of one of these content types. There are several ones, but I think I will take one, say, very interesting one, which is the ABAP environment in BTP. So let's have a very brief recap of what is transport management. It is our central transport service available in Cloud Foundry to set up your transport landscapes and then attach content to transport requests, move them through your transport landscape. Here in this case, a very simple 3 system or 3 sub-account or 3 tenant landscape, but it could be more complex. We are defining transport routes to connect these transport nodes with each other. And for the nodes which are used for deployment, we need destinations pointing to the receiving environments. The idea of transport management is that we have a very similar unified look and feel for all kinds of content. So irrespective if you're transporting a CAP application like shown by Christoph a minute ago, or if you're talking about cloud integration content, about process automation content, or something like that, or in the case I will be demoing the SAP ABAP environment in BTP content. And I will say a few words about the specifics of this content type. But the look and feel inside Cloud Management is the same for all content types, so that you can apply the same approaches, the same procedures for all content types, and the integration of Cloud Transfer Management into the change management tools like Solution Manager or Cloud ALM benefits from that, because from these higher level change management tools, you only see in quotes the transport requests, and you attach them to the corresponding change documents or features in these change management services. And again, irrespective of the content type in question. So far for the very brief recap, what is transport management for? And so these are the content types which we have released in the, say, recent 1.5 years, I would say. So it's a constant stream of content types. We have the BTP ABAP environment or BTP ABAP content. We have Analytics Cloud as a very major player. We have SAP Mobile Services, which is covered via the Content Agent service. I think Stefan will say a few words about that. Then we have some, say, long tail applications in BTP: entitlement management, batch release hub for life sciences, cell and gene therapy orchestration. So these are from the health sciences area. And we have SAP Build Process Automation. These are things which we have released in the, say, recent time. And I will switch on to the demo in a second. Just as an outlook, these are the next our list. So we have planned to enable SAP Build Apps, so formerly known as AppGyver, I think. That was planned for Q2, but let's see if it really works out that way. Could also be Q3. And we have SAP Data Sphere. Here it looks quite good that we can make it in Q3. So this would be the next one. But here is the big disclaimer saying, okay, as it is a forward-looking statement, that could still be changed. but these are the ones where we are fairly confident that this will happen. But as said, it could be a little later. Good. Then let's switch to the demo part. And we'll switch off the presentation here and give you an overview about my demo environment. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So here in this case, we have a global account with several sub-accounts. 3 of these sub-accounts are ABAP environment sub-accounts, development, QA, and production. And we have another sub-account here in which the transport management is running. So as you can see, it doesn't have to run in the same sub-accounts as the transport tenants. So it's running in a separate sub-account. And if we look into one of these ABAP environments, these ABAP environments appear here in the instances area. So in this case, it's the development ABAP environment. And from here, you switch then to the Fiori tiles with all the functionality inside the ABAP environment. And basically, the development inside this ABAP environment happens as you are used to that with your IDE, some Eclipse-based IDE, for example, the ADT. And inside ADT, the developers work just normally inside their classes and so on. And if they then activate their changes, they are creating transport requests, which are and tasks which are containing the corresponding objects which have been changed. Here in this case, I added a comment here. This TR4 test 19 comment has been added by me. So that is, and I already released this transport request. But now we see the differences of this environment in contrast to the, say, old ABAP transport environment. What happens if you release a transport request here in this environment? You are creating a commit, because every, say, ABAP content here in the BTP ABAP environment is stored in a Git repository, which is, as of now, hidden from direct access. And whenever you create, when you release a transport request, you're creating a commit inside this Git repository. And to be more specific, inside this environment, the objects are organized in software components. And you have an app inside the BTP ABAP environment with which you manage these software components. Here we have 4 components. Each component is represented by one repository inside the GitHub. And if you then go into this one, this is my demo software component, you get information on the status of this component, how many branches it has, which is the active branch, and so on. And if you then go into the branch, which is interest for you, you see that I have now here a new commit, which is exactly this transport request, which I have released. But now comes the important point. As we are committing the complete software component, the complete repository, it means that other changes which happened in parallel in that same software component are also part of this commit. And as we are transporting the commit and not specific objects, this means that all objects inside that repository which have been committed in the meantime would be part of this latest commit. So that is very different from a standard ABAP transport. That is something you really have to take into consideration. And actually, if you now look at the comparable view inside the QA environment, I go to the same software component in the QA environment and look into the corresponding main branch. Come on. We will see that here the current status of this branch is that we have this transport, this commit not yet available inside the QA environment. Yeah. And that is what we will now do via Cloud Transfer Management. How do we do that? We go into the source environment, so in the development environment, select this commit, and now we choose export commit. And now I'm asked, okay, into which transport queue we would like to feed this into. And now I have a look into my transport management environment. So this is the transport management environment. I go to my landscape overview, and I will scroll down. You see here I have lots and lots of landscapes here inside that view, and I have here my BTP ABAP environment landscape. You see here it's a BAD Dev ABAP, QoS ABAP, and Production ABAP. So these are the three environments I have shown you, and I would like to feed in my commit via this transport node. And so I choose that one, BAD Dev ABAP. I'm not sure if I have other. I would have other options as well, but this is the landscape I'm targeting for, and I'm using now export. And this now takes the information from this commit ID and creates a transport request from that. You just briefly saw this brief message confirming that this has been done. And if I now go into my transport environment, you see I have created the commit from here, and it will be pushed or put automatically in the queue of the next system, which is the QA environment. Now let's have a look into that import queue. And if I scroll down, you see this is the newly created transport request referring to the software component and to the commit ID and to the branch. It has been created just a few seconds ago, and I can now pick this transport request and start the import. And now this will be started, taking probably a few minutes to complete. And with this, I will pull more or less this commit ID from the central source code repository into the QA environment, because that's what basically happens when I start an import in quotes for the BTP ABAP content. Now, as you can see, the overall handling is quite similar to other content types, but the technical details are very different in this case. All right, let's see. It's okay. Let's go down. Okay, it has now shows all the already. Yeah, and now it has successfully imported this transport request. And if I now go again to my BTP QoS environment, and I refresh the view here, Now this has also been pulled from the central source code repository, this commit, and now I'm say on the same level inside development and QA. All right, so that was more or less the must-have information. One last thing, as Steve Jobs used to say when demoing something, I have also added some further important things we have added in the last few months to transfer management. One thing is that we can now integrate standalone, so classical cloud transfer management instances with Cloud ALM. So far, it has had to be the integrated Cloud ALM transfer management instance. Now it can be any cloud transfer management instance. We have introduced virtual transport nodes so that we can support uneven landscapes better, which means if you have, say, in your backend a 4-system landscape, but in your cloud only a 3-system landscape, you can now introduce a virtual node inside CTMS to say have that on the same level. So that makes life easier for Solution Manager Charm or for Cloud ALM. And we have increased the limits for a single upload file size to 1 GB and to the overall file size, file persistency, which has been increased to 50 GB now. Yeah, that was all from my side. And I will be looking into the chat to see whether there have been questions from your side. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you, Harold. So if you have any questions for Harold, please do type your questions in the chat. I see there's a number of questions that have already come in and are being responded to. There is one question. I don't know if it's for Harold or for Christoph, but one from Nick. How could cloud transport management work alongside with BTP CI/CD service?
I will answer that. Yeah.
Oh, you'll answer it. Okay, great. So just keep your questions coming.
Or should I can answer in one word. So in the standard pipelines for CAP applications, for example, there is an additional step you can switch on to hand over the build artifact or the mtar file to Cloud Transport Management, and from there you can feed it into the normal transport landscape and then handle the further imports or deployments into downstream systems from within Cloud Transport Management, or if you have the integration also with your change management tools like Cloud ALM or Charm. But I write it as well in the answer.
Okay.
Plus, I would like to add, we're having another session tomorrow where we show that in detail.
Perfect. Exactly. Very good. If you want to see that, you can see it tomorrow in, I think, session 8, right? What's the numbering here?
Okay, great. Thanks, Harold and Christoph. So keep your questions coming, and the team is ready to answer all of your questions. I'd like to now hand it over to Stefan. Stefan, you want to take over?
Yes, hello. Thank you for joining. Stefan Jacobi. I'm also product manager in the area of cloud and lifecycle management. And today I would like to introduce a service which is running on SAP BTP called SAP Content Agent service. So I will talk about content management in general. Then I will give a short introduction on the Content Agent service, and then also show a short demo how you can export and import content types with the Content Agent service. And last but not least, a little summary and outlook. So SAP Content Management. As you know, probably if you are developing on BTP, each service has its own format to solve specific business or technical problems, and therefore the content is different and has to be sometimes treated differently. Like, for instance, workflow, you have workflow definitions, or you have different packages for different process automations or CPI. You have rules, you have users, groups, and roles. All of that would be called content with different formats. So the challenges are that the transparency of the deployed content can be missing due to the amount of content that is available and that can be transported. You might not be 100% sure which versions of contents exists in which of the systems. You want to see the status. You may want to trigger selective transports across different accounts, or you want to clone an account or a service subscription and therefore need to transport a specific content. You might have dependencies if you have a whole business process, depending on different applications which have different content. So there are dependencies which you need to consider when you transport specific content. And last but not least, if you have a dummy system or a test system you would like to clean up, and you would need a deletion functionality. So basically what can be missing is an operational view, and this is what is needed. So we would like to have content management service where you can view and select certain content types, you export and import them. You might want to transport it via an archive file or via the cloud transport management service. And this is basically what is offered by the Content Agent service. That's a framework which is running as a service on SAP BTP. And there you can export, import, and transport different types of content, including dependencies and related content. So as an example, you have a dev account where you have process integration and management APIs with integration packages, and you would like to transport this from your dev account to your test account. You have two ways to do that. Either you do it via the Cloud Transport Management Service, which was just very well explained from Harald. And this is also the recommended way, because like that you have fixed transport routes, and you can be sure that if you start the transport from this one account to the other, that it will exactly be reach there and be exactly used by with the right data that comes across. You could also use an MTR archive. So you would download the certain content type and then you can transport it through different types, and you can then transport it to a different server, and there you can manually import it again. But as I said, recommended is to use the Cloud Transport Management Service. That's the most secure way, and nothing can happen to an archive which you transport manually from one account to another. So, as I said, the benefits are you can browse, select, export, and import content artifacts. You can view what content types are available in the sub account. You can make sure that dependencies and related content is securely transported between these sub accounts. Of course, as said, it's also uses the Cloud Transport Management Service. You have enhanced configuration checks for different destination types, and you can gather certain packages so that like that you make sure that if you have dependencies on these packages, you can transport them all at once and make sure that they are consistent on the target system. So this is the UI of Content Agent Service, and this is what I'm going to show you in a short demo. Hang on. So here you see the user interface of the Content Agent Service. You see different tiles. You see on the left side where you can navigate what activities have been performed. So I had one import and several exports from last week to today. You see what content sources are available. So that's quite a lot. That's a system which is also used by our development team. So there is lots of content types that are used, but that are different contents. But the content types you can also see here. And these are the ones that are currently available in the Content Agent Service UI. So here are what types can be transported. And I can then also again take a look what activities have been performed. So you see there, I did a few tests yesterday and today. And now I would like to, okay, we can also take a look what transport management environment is set up. It's connected. And I can then from here jump directly to the Cloud Transport Management service, but I will do that in a minute when I've started, when I've done an export. So here I would like to transport a specific content. So I have already selected, I want to select the Hello World API. So I start with selecting the content I want to export. I go on the next step. I can now add dependencies if there would be would be some. And in step 3, I can define where and how I want to export it. So here I can either use a download, which will generate an mtar file, or I can use the transport management service. I will just make a short download. And in step 5, I can then start doing this, and it will then show me what activities happen. And the mtar creation was successful. And I can see it up here in my file, in my download folder. That was the one that I just created. Okay, I could now also import it, but for the sake of time, I will not do that. Instead, I will do another export. And this time I will use the Cloud Transport Management Service. I will use the same package that I've used already. So this time, instead of making a local download, I will use the Cloud Transport Management System, and I will call it demo 2805. And with the next step, it again tells me what is the content, and it will now trigger also the creation of the mtar file, and it will then also automatically put it into the import queue of the Cloud Transport Management Service. So now it was created, and we can now go directly from here to the Cloud Transport Management. I'm already logged on here. So here, if I make a refresh of the screen, I should see that this transport that I've just created on the other side is now available on my Cloud Transport Management System. Hang on, let me check. There it is. And I can now, I've selected this one, so I can now import the selected one, and it will now get imported to the transport route that was defined. And only after a few seconds, it will be imported. And like that, I have made sure that the content is safe on the target system where I wanted to have it. Takes just a minute. And it was succeeded. I can now take a look at the log files. And I can see exactly where it came from, what was in there, and that it was finished successfully. Okay, basically that was it from my side. Thanks very much. If you have further questions, either put them in the chat, or you can also contact me directly. Hang on. And just to summarize, so the optional service can be used at no additional fee or license cost. It's part of your SAP support contract. It has this unified user interface. It gives better transparency on the deployed content. Can you get rid of this? You can easily export and transport content with dependencies and related content. You have configuration checks for the destinations, and you can transport multiple packages in one go. So we have also a few blogs. We have a video. We have a help page where you can get more information. And if you have further questions, just contact me. And as I said, or I would like to mention now, that there are new artifacts. Content management types are permanently onboarded. So in the future, you will see more content types so that it's enhanced the service even further. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. So if you guys have any questions for Stefan, I see there's one coming in from Andre. Can the import and transport management be automated, let's say as part of the job, or is it a manual import? Confirm.
Currently, it's manual imported. I think it would be part of the CTMS environment if you want to set up a permanent.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the creation of the transport request from Content Agent is a manual process, because you have to select manually the content you want to see. But if you then have created the transport request, what you can do in Cloud Transport Management is you can set a scheduled, repeated import of the complete queue. So that is possible, that you can say, okay, in QA, I would like to have every hour an automatic import, and in production, I would like to have a weekly import on Friday evening. So that is something you can set up in CTMS as for automation. And what I showed on the slide, but did not mention, is, of course, we also have APIs available that you can trigger these kinds of imports from the outside via the APIs. And that is exactly what, for example, Cloud ALM or Solution Manager are doing when they are triggering imports from within Cloud Transport Management. So that is also a possibility to connect some automation with CTMS. But as said, the creation of the transport request is normally a manual step, which happens either in CTMS, in Content Agent service, or as I've shown it in the ABAP world, from the ABAP developer using this export in the software component management.
Okay. I don't see any new questions. Boris, do you see any additional questions that we haven't answered?
No, looks good.
Okay, so if you guys have any additional questions, feel free to unmute your line. I see Gregor has unmuted your line. Do you have a question that you'd like to ask the team?
No, I would like only to thank you for the presentation.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. If you guys have any additional questions, feel free to unmute your line and ask your questions directly to our three speakers. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much, Christoph, Harold, and Stefan, for another great session. And thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Please do join us again for our 8th and final episode tomorrow. The team, Christoph and Harold, will be demoing what they presented to you today, tomorrow. So if you want to see a lot of that stuff live in action, please join us tomorrow, as they say, same time, same place. And with that, have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're located. Thank you so much, and talk to you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.